Every patch of grass has the potential to become a skyscraper. All it needs is to be put under construction. Welcome back to yet another episode of Under Construction SA. I'm your host, Thuso Motsomane. And if you haven't subscribed on this channel, please click on the subscription button and please like. And also, if it's your first time, if you don't know what we're about, I want to tell you this: Under Construction is a platform for young people who are on the rise, who are on the come up, to come and tell us their journeys and their stories, as well as we come here to learn information from people who have been in the game. And talking about that, I have someone that's very special. It's a legend in the game. She's been on YFM, Club 808, Thuso Hustle, Channel 010 Up, Metro FM, the list goes on. Sam Lehoko, how are you doing?
I'm good, Thuso. That was quite an introduction. I haven't done this in a very long time. I think it's been about 2 years since I did something like this. So it's an absolute honor. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for honoring the invite. No, it's an absolute honor for us as Under Construction to have someone like you, because specifically we still in the beginning of what we're doing. We're still on the come up, and we appreciate you coming onto this platform. And I just want to shoot straight into the interview. For someone who has never heard of you or who doesn't know you, I just want you to briefly explain who you are, where you're from, and what you are about.
Okay, I have a tendency of talking for a very long time, so I'm going to try and just condense everything. But I was born in East London. I grew up in the UK. I come from a very political background. So my parents were struggle stalwarts, so to speak, and they went to Manchester to study and prepare for what was about to happen in this country, as opposed to occupying the benches of Parliament. So politics and education was a big factor in my upbringing, you know, and I did drama in high school, and I loved drama. I loved being on the stage. I loved performing. I was quite good at memorizing monologues, and I always had teachers telling me that perhaps entertainment is, you know, the best industry for me to go in. It was certainly not maths or anything else. And to kind of, you know, fast forward into the future, I did a bit of campus radio at UCT. I then got poached and went to YFM. I was there for a very short space of time before I got poached to go to Metro FM. From Metro FM, I moved to Power FM. In between all of that, I was the face of Channel O. I did a lot of presenting for Thuso. I had the honor of hosting The Hustle, which was probably one of the best productions we've ever seen in this country.
Yeah.
And, you know, after that, I took a bit of a break. I did some online radio. That was obviously something very new to this country, I suppose. Wasn't, you know, very popular, but a great platform for me because I, you know, have quite a dirty mouth. So it was great for me to cuss on air for a change. But it was a lot of fun and a beautiful experience. So I did Touch HD, I did Cliff Central as well. And then I ended up at Mix FM. So that is where I suppose I ended my career in radio. Pretty much it. Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing journey. Yeah. As you can see, guys, we have someone that has a lot of experience in the entertainment industry. And I look forward to learning, guys. I don't know about you. But it's crazy because when I was doing a little bit of research, I saw that you were from East London. And I was like, nah, it can't be. You know, I was in East London, I think 2 years ago studying.
Yes.
I was actually in Bible school, and when they say, I was like, it can't be. She's from Cape Town. She saw Cape Town. So when you mentioned it, I'm like, yo, it means they were right. I could have went into that. But anyway, what are some of your fondest memories of growing up in your household, in your home with your parents, being political figures?
So just to go back to your comment about East London, whenever I say that, people say, Sam, are you closer? I said, no, I'm not. You know, I was just born there. You know, my father is Sotho. And, you know, we always have a laugh about it, but I would love to go back to the Eastern Cape, you know, sometime in the future. So in terms of my upbringing, I had a really, really good childhood. I think at most, I'm very grateful that my parents stayed together, despite, you know, whatever challenges they faced in politics. And I think that what I learned the most from my parents is their resilience, you know, their love for people, their love for selfless service. But it's only, you know, in my later years, like now recently, where I've seen how much I also love to be of service, you know. My parents weren't around very often, you know, they spent a lot of their time traveling. I have 3 brothers, but 2 of them are my half brothers. And then I'm, you know, here with my younger brother. And I think irrespective of whether my parents were around or not, I always felt very loved, and I always felt, you know, nurtured. And, you know, when my aunt was around, it was about going to school, showing up, getting an education, you know. My father was an avid jazz listener. He loved jazz music. And that's one of the things that I grew up listening to, everything from, you know, Nina Simone to Miles Davis to Abdullah Ibrahim. And I ended up learning how to play the piano. So as much as it was about politics and education, it was all about good music, good food, you know, what is your culture? What is your heritage? You know, family was very important, you know, staying together. All of those beautiful principles and values were something that I enjoyed learning about and practicing in my own affairs. But I suppose as one gets older and you get exposed to so many different things, it changes, you know, what your values used to be when you grew up are no longer your values, you know, because of whatever influences there are. But like I said, it was the music, it was the family, it was the road trips, it was the traveling, are probably some of my most fondest memories.
Oh, that's amazing, man. I'm tempted to ask this question since you were raised with God. How has you been raised by your parents influenced the way you raising your kids right now? Has it in any way gotten into that?
I think so. I shouldn't lie about this. You know, I think it does, you know. I don't think I had the strictest of parents, you know, but when it came to ethics and morals and these principles and values that I spoke about, I mean, it was there all the time. And I think discipline played a huge factor in a lot of my upbringing. I'm very open-minded, and I think, you know, so are my parents as well. You know, race was never a thing. We embraced, you know, all cultures, all races. And I see that with even my siblings, you know, who they date and what their taste is and that sort of thing, you know. And I always tell my children, as young as they are, you know, you like what you like, you know, but always be respectful, always show integrity. My children are very well mannered. You know, it's everything from please and thank you to I'm sorry. And one of the things that I never did as a child was talk about my feelings, talk about what was going on inside. And that's something that I always encourage my children to do. My youngest son, Amohelang, he's 4 years old, and he says, "Mommy, you're making me angry. You know, you're really upsetting me." And I love that. I love the fact that at his age, he's able to talk about his feelings and to be vulnerable and to really not be afraid to say, I'm the reason for his turmoil, you know. And I think there was an element of fear growing up, is that I was scared to tell my parents how I felt. I was scared to say what was really on my mind. You know, my father, although very sophisticated and you know, brilliant, he was also somebody who had a very short temper, you know, and I was very afraid to say the wrong thing, to do the wrong thing. Obviously did the wrong thing, but behind closed doors. And I would imagine that it had like severe consequences. And unfortunately, I carry that with me. I also have a short temper, you know, I can also be very aggressive, but you live and you learn. And I think that, you know, as long as I can kind of protect that space for my children, I don't have much to worry about, you know.
Well, I think you touched on something on speaking about your feelings and your kids being able to express themselves. I think it's a struggle for most of us who were born in the 90s with our parents, because I think also apartheid and the way they were raised influenced who they became as parents. And with us, we are blessed enough or lucky enough to have information and to know and to be exposed to a lot of stuff, to be able to know and do better because we know better. So it's an interesting point, because a lot of us can actually, myself, let me say, I can relate to what you've been saying, that in terms of expressing yourself to your mom or your dad, saying, this is how I feel, this is how it's making me feel. It's for us who are Black, it's disrespect. You can't talk back. You have to keep quiet and stuff like that. But again, it comes back from the way they also were raised, So I sort of understand. I'm not saying it's right, but I sort of understand that they are doing the best they could with what the information that they were exposed to.
Spot on. So, and Thuso, the other thing is that you can't really compare those times and our times. You really can't compare. But what it goes to show is that it is possible to rise above certain difficulties. It is possible to build resilience. It is possible to overcome any particular challenge, And I think often we spend too much time talking about the past. Yes, it happened. What happened, All we can do as young people is acknowledge what happened, and learn from those experiences and say, how can we as young people do better? How can we treat each other better? How can we show more integrity? How can we place more emphasis on equality and inclusivity, as opposed to exclusivity? So, I have no excuse. And I remember in high school when I was, eligible to vote, so to speak, I used to tell everybody, you must vote. Why are you not voting? And I used to say, my parents made it possible for you to vote, because I understand the importance of what my parents did and many other people in this country.
You talking on voting, you want me to push. It's just that the interview is not about that, but I think I share your sentiments in terms of voting, in terms of young people, and maybe sometimes it's because there are parties that are put in front of us on TV, and that the only ones, the big three that we see, and sometimes young people think that's the only thing that's there to offer. So we don't want to give other people or other parties a chance, or we don't know how much power we have in terms of voting, that if we really want to see change, instead of complaining on Twitter, instead of being on social media and speaking about corruption, we can just go to the voting polls. I mean, I think we have about, I don't want to quote wrong stats, but I know we have a lot of young people in this country. So if we really want change, we can go to the ballot boxes and take on the kind of leadership that we want to see in South Africa. So, but anyway, going back to your journey of the entertainment industry, I want to take it back, because you said you always had teachers around you telling you about you are good for the entertainment industry. I want you to take me back to the first time maybe you were on stage, the first time you did that monologue, or the first time you actually stepped into the person that we know today. How was it? What day was it? Were you fearful or were you excited? What was happening?
So in high school, I took drama as an 8th subject. I did a language, I did geography, I did pure maths, the usual subjects. And for me, dramatic arts was probably the one subject that I was the most passionate about. And, of course, because it is a subject, you need to do the theory, you need to read about the history, you need to read about, the Shakespeares of the world, etc. And, you've got to sit in a classroom and understand what it means to be a performer, and you have to also decide if this is something for you. And of course, there were a couple of, small monologues here and there, but I don't think I took myself very seriously, but it was through teachers and through my peers where I was able to see myself through the eyes of others. When you have people around you, very close to you, they're able to really appreciate something from a different perspective. And it was that encouragement and that sort of nudge in the right direction that gave me the confidence that I possibly missed, And I think that my biggest moment was my final performance in Matric. And it was a group performance, and our theme was time. And we had to take all sorts of resources from everywhere, whether it was from articles or monologues or plays or movies or the internet. And we had to incorporate all these things that had to do with time. And it was the most beautiful piece that I have ever been involved in. And I suppose that is, performing arts. But there were many a times where I would impersonate people, I would make people laugh, I would improvise. I think one of my biggest strengths is to improvise, and a combination of all of those, including, the support that I had from my peers and my teachers, pushed me towards that direction of being behind a microphone. Maybe not necessarily, being on Broadway or anything, but I suppose I had the personality, I had the charisma, I had the confidence eventually. I'd like to think I had the looks as well, and I had the voice, so I would have to definitely say that final performance, saying that this is it, and I'm sharing my story with the world, and working with people to create some art. That for me was powerful, nerve-wracking, very daunting. But I think looking back, I'm very proud of my performance, and I got a distinction. So,
wow, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. So, going from high school to varsity, UCT radio, then now YFM, Power FM, Channel O, V Entertainment, Club 808, Metro, all of them. I want to know, especially for me, because I'm trying to get it, how was it, meeting, interviewing people like Davido? I heard you speak about Talib Kweli on Meg G's podcast. So how was that moment? How did it feel being that person, like for eventually realizing your dreams?
Yeah, I think, doing some campus radio, is fun. And I think that what I wanted to do when I was there was to treat it like a commercial radio station. So I was inviting, JR, I was inviting El Tito, I was inviting Dream Team, to come to campus radio and do an interview. I think at some point, I even had Kurichana in there. And I said, why are we limiting ourselves? Why not bring in these people? Because everybody was traveling to Cape Town. And being poached was probably one of the most incredible experiences of my life, because, I tried it. I took Scoop's advice initially, and he said to me, Sam, go to Joburg and try your luck. Because I'd met him at a social gathering, so to speak. And, it didn't happen the way I perhaps anticipated, So I came back to Cape Town, and eventually, long story short, I was poached. And my son, my firstborn, Garabelo, he was only 3 months old. And my partner at the time, we had just purchased a beautiful house, and we were ready to, start our future together and build this home. And that was the beginning of an incredible career. And I had to leave behind my home. I had to take my baby with me. And I think the kind of mentality and thinking that I went to Joburg with was that, oh, well, if I seem like this popular person here in Cape Town and I have all these friends around me, that's exactly what it's going to be like in Johannesburg. And I learned my lesson, not immediately, but I learned a lot later on in life that that's not really how things work out there, And of course, it was to my detriment. But what I realized is that I was moving forward very quickly in a very, very short space of time. At some point, I was known as this it girl, this hun that came to Joburg, who had never lived in Johannesburg, who had never lived the culture, who had never been a part of the industry, that came out of nowhere and was covered in tattoos and, brought a very different, essence to radio. I didn't sound like anybody. I didn't look like anybody. I had a very different outlook on life. My first show on YFM was called Made Different. And because everything was happening so fast in such a short space of time, I don't think I gave myself enough time to process what the industry was all about. I didn't give myself enough time to build really good connections with people. I was just moving on from one person to the next. But to meet some of the most incredible talent in this country was an absolute honor. I think I've probably interviewed every single artist in this country, from Maviki Zolo to KO, to Black Motion, to Lady Zamar, and I think what I was really good at was being present in the moment and focusing on the positive parts of an artist, their talent, their dreams, their ambitions, their accomplishments, not so much the relationships and everything else that we were reading about. And I think there is a particular skill to being able to interview a person, let's do the follow-up question. Let's talk about what you're talking about. This is interesting, and never afraid to veer off track, I suppose. So it's nice to be nostalgic, and it's really lovely to think about my days in radio and television. And I think I had a great deal of humility as well, but also I was a big fan. I had to kind of just make sure that I don't look like too much of a fan, but I was there, So incredible experience, and I will never forget any interview that I've ever done. I will never.
Wow, that's really amazing. You spoke about, I like the fact that you spoke about you in a conversation with Scoop. You went to Joburg and you were disappointed. I really want to know how, at that time when you came back from Johannesburg, now you're coming back to Cape Town, probably there are naysayers, there are people there like, who did you think you are? You thought you were going to make it. How did you deal with that disappointment of going to Joburg and not getting what you were initially there for and having to come back home, which in some sort of way is a shame?
Look, when I went that initial time, it was just an in and out thing. I had never relocated. I had just flown up to have a conversation with the programs manager at YFM. And at least I still had something to come back to. I still had, campus radio to do. And I think for me, what I realized very quickly in that moment is that timing is everything. Yes, it is about who you know and not so much about what you know. The assumption is that if you're talking to a Scoop, you're going to get the gig immediately. But there are people who know what they want. There are people that also have a particular vision and a particular sound for their radio station. And there's nothing, one can do about that. I've never, ever in my entire life manipulated a situation. I've never said to anybody, I'll give you this to give me a gig. I'll sleep with you to give me a gig. It's never happened. And what I needed to understand is that it's not that I wasn't talented. It's just that it wasn't my time, because I was already doing incredible work on campus radio. And there's a book that I often refer to in a lot of my interviews where it says that talent is never enough. Why is it that why is it the most, talented, guy on the street playing the saxophone or playing the violin isn't, up on the stage and on every single billboard, getting every single deal. So talent is not enough. And maybe they saw something in me that needed a little bit of work, whether it was my confidence, whether it was my overconfidence, maybe, it was my lack of faith. I don't know, I could be very wrong, but there certainly wasn't a great deal of disappointment. I think it would have been very devastating if I packed my bags and left, under the hopes that something would happen. But I just went for an interview. I saw it as an interview and a gig that I didn't get at the time. It's okay.
Wow. I like what you said, that it's not that you were not talented, it's just that it was not the right time. Damn, that's something that I'm taking away from this interview. You speak so much about being different and being authentic and being yourself, and that's what got you where you were at the time. How important is it for one to be themselves and to be different and authentic to who they are, and not let the environment of Johannesburg or wherever they are to change them?
Extremely important, very. I think, part of the reason why I had such a great career in the beginning is because of some of the things that I mentioned initially. I was known for looking different and sounding different and all these wonderful things. And like I said, my show was called Made Different, Monday to Friday, 10 till 12 on YFM. And I loved the fact that I stood out, and I also, appreciated the fact that a big part of me was never afraid to get vulnerable. I think in a lot of interviews that people conducted with me, where I was being interviewed, I was very much willing to share about my journey. I was very much willing to bring people into the conversation. I remember having a show, at Y saying, guys, I have nowhere to live. I've been living in a hotel for a couple of weeks now. Can you help me, find a place? And I think that, part of my success and part of the things that I was going through was because of my fans. And we forget that. We forget the fact that no man is an island, and we need to leverage off of each other to succeed, to grow. So I can say here that, yes, I'm talented, and I had all these things that I wanted to share about, and also learn and grow and that sort of thing. But it was because of the support that I received from people that I, had this beautiful journey that, I suppose, grew into something quite special. And, I think that getting to know yourself takes a very long time. It does take a very long time. However, you can speed up the process a little bit if you focus on yourself. If the focus becomes on everything else and what she's wearing and how he looks and who he's with and what car he drives, it's very difficult to focus on self and figure out what it is that you want to achieve as an individual. Mm. Yeah, I could say more on that, but I know there's messages going on here and stuff.
Yeah. Well, no problem. That's really amazing. I want to ask you that what some of the challenges in your short career, or the career that you've had so far, that you have faced, and how have you overcome them?
Wow. I don't know if you're referring to challenges in the industry or just challenges in life.
Let's say challenges in the industry for now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of challenges. I think one of the challenges is the not sleeping. I think I was deprived of my sleep for a very long time, particularly when I moved over to the SABC. And I would wake up at a ridiculous hour. I would be on air. I would stay behind for an hour or two. I would leave, go to set, shoot the hustle, spend the entire day and night there. Sometimes even, go out after that and almost have zero to no sleep, That was the biggest challenge. And I don't think I was very disciplined in that regard. I was in demand, it's radio, it's TV, it's gig, it's MC, it's red carpet, it's this, that, and the other. So that was one of the challenges. I think the other challenges probably have to do with relationships and connections with people in the industry. I think the approach is that we will back you, but only, for a short space of time. That's just how the industry has always been. People don't want to see you doing better than them. People don't want to see you, more successful than them. People are constantly in competition. And I think what I've realized, later in life is that I need to be my greatest competition. I can also be my worst nightmare, but, I need to be my greatest competition. Other challenges include, substances and alcohol. Those were things that I also battled with for a very long time. And only recently have I, spoken openly about that, not in so much depth, but it's there. And I think that people don't take the time to have that conversation, and possibly a conversation that I need to start having with young people very soon. So those are probably the main challenges. Of course, there's more, spending too much money, not thinking that we're making enough money, yeah.
So I hear the challenge part, but I would really love to know with in terms of alcohol or drugs, everything that you mentioned, that how did you navigate? What helped you? Was it friends? Was it family? Did you read a book? How did you overcome or solve some of the problems that you just mentioned?
What I had to do is I had to lose everything. I think that's what needed to happen. And if anything, I don't think I lost anything. I just gave it all away. I gave my career away. I gave, opportunities away. There's things that I gave away because I was too preoccupied with substances and alcohol. So the reality is that everybody is replaceable. That's just how it is. Some people have incredible careers with longevity and they're able to reinvent themselves, and others aren't. I wouldn't say that I'm one of the people who can't reinvent themselves, but I think that my path has changed incredibly. So I needed to hit some sort of rock bottom, and I had to really understand the true meaning of having that gift of desperation, where you are so desperate to heal, you are so desperate to connect with people, you are so desperate to feel something. For a long time I didn't feel anything. I don't talk about it very much, but there was a time where I found myself in the ICU for about 7 days because I couldn't bring myself to understanding where I was going, what my purpose was. And for a long time, I turned to substances, I turned to alcohol, and I was very secretive about it. I didn't want people to know that I was battling. I didn't want people to know that I felt overwhelmed. I didn't want people to know that I was really struggling. And I suppose that the rock bottom was essential. Giving everything away was essential. And really just completely removing myself from everything. I was away for about 4 months. Nobody could get hold of me. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew what was going on for me. And I call it the most incredible hiatus of my entire life, where the focus became on me, not on my career, not on my children, not on my goals, not on my purpose, not on my car, not on my friends. The focus remained on me. And it still continues to remain on me. And it's not a question of, am I being selfish or not? I'm doing what's necessary.
Wow. So I think it's a need for one at some point in life to just be selfish with time. That's what I'm getting, and just go and find out who you are, where you are going. And with that being said, you mentioned the word purpose, which is a word that I really love. There's a guy I actually listen to, which is Dr. Maslow, who speaks on that thing. I wanted to ask you, how important is it for one to find their purpose, their reason for being, why they exist on this earth?
I don't know if I can answer to why it's important, because one doesn't find their purpose at a particular age. I always say, and this is something my godfather said to me, is that the 2 most important days of your life is the day you were born and the day you find your purpose. And it happens very differently for everybody. Some people find their purpose at a very young age. Others find their purpose much later. So for me, and I acknowledge what's going on here, don't worry, but for me, in terms of purpose, I can say that I think I'm still figuring it all out, but the only way to discover what your purpose really is if you do the deep diving, is if you do the introspection, is if you understand what are your strengths and weaknesses. What is it that you like doing? What gives you joy? What gives you a sense of fulfillment? What allows you to think? What stimulates your mind? And I would have to say, and I'd love to share about it later, that what stimulated me, over 2 years ago, doesn't stimulate me anymore. What stimulates me now never stimulated me before. And this is part of growing, and this is part of the process that I had to take, is learning to understand who I am and what it is that I want to do. But I think I'm getting there. I think I know what my purpose is, almost there.
Oh, that's amazing, man. You spoke about the things that used to stimulate you back then don't stimulate you now. I want you to go, because you say you want to go into it later, but I'd love for us to go into it now. What do you mean? What is that all about?
So I think, without being too philosophical, everybody has their hierarchy of needs. We also know the Maslow hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it speaks about, food and safety and security and family and all those things. And none of those things were important to me. What was important to me was a good time. What was important to me was looking for love. And unfortunately, I looked for love in the wrong places, but my children weren't as important to me as what they should have been. My soul consumed by what I thought was my life, and what I've realized, particularly after those 4 months where I went away, I really, found the true meaning of work, my life, my children. But there's no such a thing. Life is about balance. And what we need to do is identify all those important or key parts in our life and give all of them equal attention. So, for example, Thuso, one of the things that I did when I graduated is I focused on something called the life wheel, which is encompassing of all of these different things, from career to finance to family to friends to recreation to spirituality to contribution and self-image. And for a long time, I was neglecting the family aspect, the spiritual aspect, the self-image aspect. And self-image to me was, stuff. It was more the inside stuff. I had to really look inward. So today, one of the biggest things that really gives me a lot of joy and a lot of fulfillment is the service that I do. I do an incredible amount of service. And I think the motivation behind that is, for a very long time, I was just taking and taking and taking from everybody. I drained my family. I drained, people that I worked with. I was, at some point, incredibly unreliable. And if people call me a service junkie, so be it, but it's a journey that I've taken where I need to give back far more than what I've taken. And so now the things that stimulate me is the service, connecting with others, giving back, prayer and meditation, focusing on my sobriety. I am approaching 18 months in sobriety, which is huge for me. I couldn't go a day without picking up. So all I need to do today is take it one day at a time. Just for today, I need to have a sense of serenity. And one of the things that I say very often, in fact, almost every day, is that we need to look at what serenity means to us. And serenity is not freedom from the storm. Serenity is peace within the storm, because we will never escape the violence. We'll never escape the turmoil. We'll never escape the abuse. We'll never escape the discrimination. We will never escape those things. But how do we find some sort of serenity within all of this chaos? And it is one of the most incredible things to be able to find a sense of serenity, a sense of fulfillment. And a beautiful word that I like to use often is equanimity. Equanimity is when you are so zen that nothing can break you down, so to speak. So, I could talk for days on my journey, and I could, share my experience, strength, and hope in more ways than one. But what I think is important is that we need to find that serenity in some way.
Wow, I think I'm taking away with the thing of being at peace in the midst of the storm, because it's really not easy. And I think a lot of us, when we're going through storms, we panic a lot. I like that you said storms will always be there, things will always be there, but you just have to find that peace within the storm. And for me, I want to ask you this, because you spoke about being 18 months sober. What was the key for you to stay sober for 18 months? What has helped you this far, for someone that's looking, that's maybe going through the same thing, who is struggling with drug abuse, or struggling with alcohol, but wants to quit, what would you say was the key for you to, what motivated you to stay sober for 18 months?
I think, when I hit my first rock bottom years ago, and I landed up in the ICU, I had a lot of reservations. And I think what I was doing all of this for, I was not doing this for myself. I was doing this for my family, and the minute you don't do things for yourself, it's also pointless, and for many years I hid behind, this mask, and I became very secretive, and I didn't share about my journey as much as I should have with my family. And when I reached my second rock bottom, I knew that I couldn't continue in this manner. And when I reached my second rock bottom, I had just lost my dad. I lost my father. He was incredibly sick. And I remember during that time, I never gave myself any room to grieve. It was the most devastating thing I had ever experienced, and I think many daughters can relate to that relationship with their fathers, So for 11 months, I spiraled and I was out of control. I didn't see the meaning of life. I didn't care about finding purpose. I had this void that I filled with all the wrong things. So 11 months after my dad passed away, I think, there was just too much unmanageability, and I was powerless over all of these things. I wake up every day and I admit that I'm an addict. I wake up every day and I say, I'm Sam and I'm an addict. And it took me a very long time to admit. What I do today is a 12-step program where I have 5 incredibly important pillars in my life. One of those pillars is a higher power. I see God as good, orderly direction. I have a concept of a God of my own understanding, a God that I believe is supportive, loving, kind, understanding, full of wisdom, and overprotective. And another pillar is my meetings. I go to meetings every day. I share my experience, strength, and hope. I go to a place where every single feeling is welcome, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, whether it's gratitude, whether it's joy, whether it's confusion. Another of my pillars is the writing and my step work. I write down the things that I'm going through. And part of my journey is about uncovering, discovering, and discarding. So when you enter a journey like this, first you have to give up. You have to say, I'm powerless. I'm powerless over my addiction. Then the second part of your process is to own up and say, these are the things that I did in my life. These are the people that I hurt. These are the people that I manipulated. So it's owning up and giving up. And then it's about making up and going to people and making that amends. And I had to make amends to all 3 of my brothers. I had to make living amends to my family. I had to make living amends to my friends. I had to make an amends to my father, although he's passed on. And once you've made up, you need to keep up. And I need to maintain this change. So I think irrespective of how you decide to get clean or sober, you need to understand that there is a thing called the cycle of change. And what happens is, it's very easy to identify where you're in the cycle of change. And it could be anything. Do I want to change my behavior? Do I want to change my career? Do I want to stop drugging and drinking? Do I want to stop, behaving in a particular way? So you've got pre-contemplation where you don't even know that you have to change. And I was in that stage for years. I didn't think I had a problem. I didn't think I was a particularly bad person. Very humble. Very kind, very generous, paid for everything, gave my children everything that they wanted. So pre-contemplation is the first stage. The second stage is contemplation, where it's been brought to my attention that I'm unreliable, that I am unfocused, that I have neglected parts of my life, that I'm not focused on my health, that I'm giving too much away and not cherishing what I have. Then once it's brought to my attention, I focus on what we call determination, where I'm now determined to change. I'm determined to get clean. It's very easy to get clean, but staying clean is very difficult. So once we move over from determination, I mean, it's obvious that now we have to put in the action. And what does that look like? What does putting the action look like? Does it mean going to rehab? Does it mean going to jail? Does it mean committing suicide? Does it mean isolating from the world? What does putting in the action mean to you? Or does it mean simply saying, I am going to focus on myself and do the work that is needed to be done? Because those three things that I mentioned earlier are the consequences of alcoholism and addiction. That's where it ends up: jails, institutions, and death. And the determination turned into action, which I did for about 4 months and continue to do. And the final stage in the cycle of change is maintenance, which is incredibly important. I have to maintain a particular type of thinking. I have to maintain a particular type of behavior. They talk about practicing principles and values in all of your affairs. So how is it that I'm honest with my friends, but I can't be honest with my family? How is it that I can be vulnerable on a platform like this, but I can't be vulnerable with my family? So what we need to begin to do is to practice all of these principles and values wherever we are and wherever we go. That you are not one Thuso with me and a different Thuso with somebody else. That you are the same throughout, and you maintain your attitude and your sobriety and your charisma. And if anything, I think today, what recovery has given me is a sense of freedom, first and foremost, a new sense of confidence, and it's also built character, where I have a completely different character today than what I had before. And I know I've said a lot, and I hope that I haven't confused anybody, because the question was, how did I do it? And what happened is I had a rock bottom and I lost my dad. But unmanageability and powerlessness is very dangerous. And I think everybody in life has some sort of addiction. We're all addictive people. Some are addicted to food. Others are addicted to work. Some are addicted to sleeping. You know, I just chose another type of addiction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really, really helped, because for us as under construction, one of the things we really emphasize on is practical steps. You know, people ask people, how did you make it in the industry, for an example? Hard work. They just answer one with hard work. And they don't tell you about this many things that you have to do, like you have to connect with the right people. Yes, you need a gift and a talent, but you know, it's about who you know. It's about this is how you have to move. This is what you have to say and stuff like that. And I like that you went into detail. It really helps when someone takes a step by step to really understand. And I think it's practical, and someone is really going to benefit from what you've said and the information that you've given us. With that being said, I want to ask, for looking back at your career so far, where you are, what has been the greatest lesson that you've learned through everything that you've been through? The mother, career, what has been the greatest lesson in life for you this far?
Progress, not perfection. That is my motto today. I am a huge perfectionist, and I see today that it has its consequences. When one is a perfectionist, they're often very controlling, wanting to control the outcome of a situation, wanting to control people, wanting to control the nature of a situation. You know, it's my way or the highway. That was my attitude for a very long time. And I think the other difficulty is that I had very high expectations of people. I've always had high expectations of people, but what they were actually was unrealistic expectations. Just because I give 100%, why do I anticipate and expect you to give 100%? And there are certain things that are important to me, my values, that might not be the same to you. So what I've learned is that things cannot always be perfect. And the unpredictability of life has shown me that it's how I deal with things in life. You know, if you look at things like feelings and emotions, it's fine to have feelings, but it's what we do with them, how we respond to our anger, how we respond to our sadness, how we respond to our depression, how we respond to our fear is so crucial. So we go through a process of identifying how we feel and verbalizing that and telling someone, I feel vulnerable, I feel scared, I feel inadequate. And then we decide what we're doing with those particular things. And I think, if anything, my purpose, maybe I shouldn't keep using that word, but my goal is not to be perfect. My goal is to progress. My goal is to become better. And if I look at, loving someone and showing compassion, kindness, tolerance, and all those things, my goal is to show more patience, more tolerance, more love, and be generous about these things, right?
Yeah. You're dropping jewels today. Progress, not perfection. Progress. I like it. Briefly, if someone wants to go into this industry, the entertainment industry, whether you want to be an actor, whether you want to do podcasting, whether you want to do radio, whatever it is that they want to do, what would be your advice to them? Like, how do they move? What should they do? Even if it's 3 or 4 things, 2 things, I don't know.
Hard work. I'm not going to be that guy and lie about it. I think Thuso, it's very different for a lot of people. I look at what's happening in the industry from afar. I look at, who's on air and who's on television and who's doing what and who's DJing and all these things, and I of course have my opinions about a lot of what's going on. And what worked for me is my authenticity. That's how I made it. It was the fact that I presented myself to the world as who you see here today. This is how I became successful. And I think the other thing which worked for me as well was my passion. People, particularly people who have gotten into altercations with me, they find me to be incredibly short-tempered and aggressive. And I always say to them, no, I'm just passionate. This is something that I'm passionate about, but I've also had to understand what that's all about, because one's delivery is very different to the reception. To me, it might seem like I'm passionate, but to other people, it's very aggressive and harsh, So I've had to look at that. But I do find myself to be a very passionate person, passionate, about what I do, passionate about the things that I speak about to people. Passion is important for me, even in relationships, I find myself to be a very passionate individual. So to be authentic and to be very passionate are the 2 things that I would like to think, got me very far. And the other thing is that I always stuck to what I knew. People used to pressurize me to DJ. Oh, Sam, can you DJ? People used to book me to DJ, and I had never touched, a deck in my life. I didn't know how to DJ. And I always maintained that I will never, ever become a DJ, because that was not what I came into the industry to do. I came into the industry to be a radio and a television presenter. And I think what started to happen in my time in the industry is that there were people who were doing everything. And I remember a particular DJ said, oh, this one is just stealing our checks, DJing, talking, presenting, MC, And that was probably also the most heartbreaking thing for me, is that people can never stay in their lane in this industry. You can't have somebody just being a DJ. The DJ has to be a radio presenter, has to be a television presenter, has to be emceeing at a gig, has to be, the face of a particular brand. So what we're not doing is we're not creating space for new talent, for new faces, for new perspectives. We're just copying and pasting. And what I wanted to do is maintain my role in the industry. What is my role? To play music, to showcase new talent, to broadcast, So when the pressure was on and people thought that I needed to make more money, I didn't listen to anybody. Because of course I could have done that. I could have been a DJ today, but I have no desire. My desire and your desire is very different. So I think that the third and final point in everything that I've said is just stick to what you know. It's okay to not be doing 10 things at once, because how can you perfect that one thing if you're doing so many other things? So I had an opportunity to only focus on being a broadcaster, in being a personality, talking, listening, interviewing, giving perspective, holding the space, bringing artists together. That was my focus and that was my purpose in the industry. And I'm so grateful that I stuck to that, because today I find myself also still doing only the things that I love. So it's not just hard work, by the way.
Hey, as we go to the end, I want to ask you this question that I probably going to ask this year every woman that comes onto the platform. Is that, do you feel the need or the responsibility to make sure, since we are in a male-dominated world, to make sure that you make it easier for the next upcoming woman in whatever industry that you are in? Do you feel that it's important to do that?
I don't know about making it easy for people, because there's a saying, and Thuso, maybe you can help me out. It said something about, things that don't last come easy, and things that last don't come easy, or something to that effect. It's something like that. Somebody will like, don't tweet me about that, but you know what I mean, And what I realize is that the things that came easy for me, I never appreciated. I think that things that were just freely given to me and shoved on my lap was something that I took for granted, And I remember there was a particular television producer who said to me, you know what, Sam, I apologize for throwing you in the deep end. I apologize for giving you all these gigs and all this work. I apologize for, thinking that you could handle it, and for a while I was actually quite resentful. I said, yeah, it's your fault, that I ended up where I was. But I think, to add on to what you said earlier, you always just make do with what you have at the given time, because that's all you know. And with time, you find that you know more as you progress. So today I know far more than what I did before, but I have no regrets. I acknowledge everything that's happened in the past. I accept everything that I've done. I still have a lot of amends to make to a couple of people in the industry, but I think that it is important to not make things easy for people, but to give the opportunities and give credit where it's due. I love this country and the talent that we've produced. I think that we have an incredible history in terms of the music that we make, the music that we're now producing. I've always been very pro collaborations, bringing people together. I'll never forget an interview I did with KO and Black Motion. And it's something I did every Friday on Y, and I'd bring two artists from two different genres. And KO, I remember him saying, hey, I wasn't sure about your music, but by the end of the interview, everybody was in love, and that's what I loved seeing. I loved just bringing people together and creating that space, because what brings us together is our love for music, So I'm digressing. I'm going to go back to your question. I don't think we should make it easier for people, but I do think that we need to, when we say we want to open up the industry, we need to do it. We really need to say we're opening it up to new faces, new talent. And for me, I would love to go back to radio. I think that's one thing that I would love to do. Maybe not so much television, but I'd love to go back to radio, because the talent hasn't left me. I'm still the very, same nutcase that I was a couple of years ago, right? But I have a story to tell. I have a story to share. I have new perspective. I'm far more reliable than what I used to be, you know. But I think the perception is that if we don't see you for a long time, you're irrelevant. You know, that's how. Me, I think if we say something, we have to stick to it. We need to say we're opening up the industry and really go out and find some hardcore talent, because trust me, it's out there. I see it every day.
I like what you said again. You said it's not about making it easier, but giving people opportunity. I think I like it that way, where you like it's about opening up the industry. It's not making it easier, but allowing people to get the opportunity to express their talents, which is very amazing. I think we have reached the end of the show, and what we normally do, this is the part that I love on the Construction SA that we make everyone do. And even when people ask for questions, I never add this part. It's always I like the surprise factor of it.
Okay.
If you were to describe your life right now, no, don't worry. If you had to describe your life right now with a song, what song would it be? And please sing the chorus for us.
Oh my gosh. You know, if you just left it at a word, I would have been able to say the word, because if I could describe my life right now, it's simple. It's very simple.
Use a song. Yeah. That's
I'm going to say songs with the lyrics simple. I don't know if I can do that. I'll come back to that one. But my life is very simple at the moment. Yeah, I'll come back to you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Next.
You say there's no song. Even if it's just a soundtrack to what is happening right now. That's what I always get. People always run away from this question. Like a soundtrack to what's happening here. Like the song that you're really listening to and you really love. Just the chorus. It's the fun part of the day. We like having fun after the construction.
Oh, you know, I just remember saying to every DJ, can you play Drop It Like It's Hot? I always used to say that. Give me the mic. Then you put me on the spot. But, you know, like, to be honest, my life is very simple right now. It's not complex. I live a very beautiful, balanced, simple life, you know, free from active addiction, full of love. I look at this cup and I say, well, I filled my life with love and compassion and kindness and understanding. And what happens is when we fill our cup, it's the overflow that we share with others. And today, that's what I do. I'm sharing that overflow with all my people. And I guess what I didn't touch on is what I do today. You know, I work with domestic violence victims every day. I, you know, work with addicts and alcoholics every day. I work in a very corporate environment today. I have businesses. I am a certified life coach. I, you know, do all these incredible things. And, you know, I think it's pushing me in a very beautiful direction. And if, you know, it were to happen that I was asked to go back to radio, I'd probably say yes, you know, but this is where I am right now. Trying to dodge that song. Let's move on.
I guess you're successful at dodging the song, but we really want to really appreciate you, and for me what you've done in a short space of time in the entertainment industry. I used to watch you a lot. I think when I look back at that time, yourself, Scoop, Lala, like when I look. Sorry, what happened? Someone called me while I was still speaking. But when I look at the quality, and I always say, I'm sure even my friend who's here now knows I always say that I look at certain channels, I'm like, what's really happening now? Like there's really a shortage of presenters on TV, whether on TV or on radio. Yeah, we all know the politics, but to watch you do your own thing, the authenticity, like you say, you just captivated us. I remember watching Thuso Hustle season 1 that I had never seen anything like Thuso Hustle. So it was just such an amazing show to come out of South Africa. And I'm such a Scoop fan. And if Scoop is not on 10 up, I don't really like watching, but you were that one person that I was like, okay, at least they got a proper replacement, So I really
proper replacement. Thank you. Proper.
No, so, but I really, for me, enjoyed hearing, even on radio, your voice, like, the way it's unique and you say it's authentic, and want to appreciate you for coming and giving us an opportunity to talk to you on Under Construction SA. From me and everyone who's involved in this, we are really, really appreciative, and we thank you for making time for us. This is very valuable in an industry where when we have 100 and something subscribers. Not people like you don't respond to us, but with good reason. I understand, it's still building, But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Thuso. Yeah, I like I said, I haven't done something like this in over 2 years, and I would love to still continue sharing about my journey. And I am one person that responds to DMs. I respond to friend requests, I respond to interview requests, I respond to people who need someone to talk to. In the last couple of weeks, there's some of my fans and supporters who have been reaching out asking for help, and I think sometimes we place too much emphasis on financial help. Sometimes it's not so much about the financial help, but how can I support you from an emotional level? How can I support you from a physical level or a mental level? What kind of support can I give you there? And I think what we need to do as young people is focus on mind, body, and spirit, and make sure that those 3 things are in sync. Today, my mind could be very different if I spent my days on Twitter. So I stay away from Twitter. What am I feeding my mind? How am I feeding my body? I really take good care of my body, and I try and keep that conscious contact with my higher power so that my spirit, is well. And I just want to encourage people to be authentic, to find their purpose, to, focus on bringing people together. I think often we want to isolate and do things on our own and climb whichever, ladder it is, whether it's a corporate ladder or an industry ladder, let's focus on building each other, building ourselves and then in turn building each other. And it's been an absolute ride hanging out with you today. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that your followers and your subscribers would have at least gotten one thing out of it, that I'm still awesome. That's probably the biggest thing that I want people to take away, that I'm actually still awesome.
Yeah, you are really still awesome, man. And to everyone who's been watching this podcast, there's a quote that I'd like to leave us with. The legendary Dr. Maslow says, where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. So I'd like to encourage each and every one of us to really pursue or try to find out why we exist on Earth. And my name is Thuso Motsomane. It's been an amazing episode of Under Construction SA. I'll see you on the flip side. We out. Peace.
Thank you.